Have you ever picked up like a really dense research paper and felt like you were totally in over your head?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
you were trying to read another language almost?
Yeah, it's intimidating.
Totally.
Yeah.
I've been there.
It can feel like academic writing is this whole other universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if I told you that by understanding the way academics write, it could actually help you think more critically
Oh, for sure.
in any part of your life?
Absolutely. And that's what's so cool about it. Once you understand kind of what's going on,
Yeah.
it's applicable everywhere.
It is. It's true.
Um,
So that's what we're going to dive into today, like really unlocking the code of academic writing.
yeah. Crack the code.
Exactly. We've got all your notes and articles right here,
Okay.
ready to dig out some gold.
Let's do it.
What I think is so interesting is that once you get the rules down,
Hmm.
it's like you said, it's applicable everywhere, but then you can start to enjoy it more.
Yeah. And you can appreciate it for what it is.
Right.
Because it is like its own symphony in a way. I was just going to say that.
Oh, really?
Like this very structured symphony of ideas.
It is, and I think that's a great analogy.
So where do we even begin with this? What are the like core elements of this symphony of academic writing?
I think a good place to start is with the purpose behind it.
Okay.
What's the point? What are we trying to do here?
Right.
And I think whether you have a student writing a paper or you have somebody who's been researching this for years and years,
Mm.
trying to get something published in Nature,
Yeah.
it's the same goal.
It's the same goal.
You're presenting an argument and you're backing it up with evidence.
Well, I like that.
Yeah.
So it's not just about having an opinion. You have to present your case like a lawyer would in court.
Exactly. And just like in a courtroom, there's rules.
Right.
You can't just go in there.
You can't just start yelling.
Yeah, you have to have some sort of structure.
Okay.
And that kind of brings us to our first pillar of academic writing, which is structure.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's not enough to have good ideas.
It's not enough.
You have to present them in a way that people can follow and understand.
You have to walk your reader through your thought process.
It's like building a house. You don't just like,
Through the bricks together.
yeah, you need a plan.
You need a blueprint. You need a plan.
So what does that look like in an academic paper?
So you have your intro, which kind of sets the stage.
Okay.
You have your method section, which tells everybody how you did your research, what was your process.
Okay.
Then you've got your results, outlining what you found.
Okay.
And then you have the discussion, which puts it all into context.
Oh, okay.
That's the so what.
This is making me think about all those times where I've skimmed a research paper
Yeah.
and I'm like, I don't even know what I just read.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet it's because they didn't follow the structure.
Right. Or they didn't lead the reader through in a way that made sense.
But even with a really great structure, an argument is only as good as the evidence.
Right. 100%.
That's what makes it convincing.
Yeah, you can't just make stuff up.
No.
You have to have proof.
Right. And that's where our second pillar comes in.
Exactly. Evidence.
I like
You've got to have the receipts.
You've got to have the receipts. I like that. So in the world of academic writing, you can't just make claims.
Mm-hmm.
You need to back them up with facts and stats and citations.
Right. You have to be like, don't trust me, bro. Look at this.
I did my research.
I did my research. Here are the facts.
And that's what our source material was talking about with that example about dengue fever.
Yes.
When they brought in those hard numbers
Yes.
from the Ministry of Public Health in Bangkok.
Yeah. And you're pulling from a credible source.
Right.
It's not just some random blog.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is legit.
It makes a difference.
It does, because anybody can just throw out numbers
Oh, totally.
and say like, oh yeah, 1 million people agree with me. But where's your proof?
Where are you getting that from? Because I said so is not evidence.
Okay.
Okay, so this is making me think about how I look at information in my everyday life.
Oh yeah. How so?
Like, even if I'm just reading a news article now,
Yeah.
I can't just take it at face value.
Right.
I have to look for those citations.
Mm-hmm.
But then, even with all the right evidence,
Mm-hmm.
it's not even just about having it, it's about what you do with it. Right.
That's a good point. You're right. It's how you analyze it.
Right.
It's not just about gathering it. It's
Yeah.
what do you do with all this evidence that you have?
Right.
And that brings us to our next pillar, critical thinking.
So we're not just like blindly accepting all this information.
No.
We have to look at it with a critical eye.
Yeah. Put your skeptic hat on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Be a little skeptical.
Be a scientist about it.
So how do we do that?
Well, it's all about asking those questions.
Sure.
Like, okay, so they found this, but what are the limitations of this study?
Okay.
What could they have missed?
Right.
What didn't they consider? Does the researcher, do they have any biases? Oh, interesting.
That could be like influencing
Right.
that conclusions.
Totally.
Or could there be another explanation
Oh, I like that.
for this data?
Okay.
So it's really about kind of like poking holes
Mm.
in what you're reading.
So even in academic writing,
Yeah.
where it feels very structured and rule-based, like we were just talking about,
Right.
there's still room for debate and interpretation.
Absolutely, because it's all part of a conversation.
Okay.
Right. So somebody might present some research, but then the whole point is for other people to read it and be like, well, hold on.
Did you think about this?
Yeah, what about this angle?
Or what about this? Yeah.
Right. So it's a constantly evolving.
I like that. It's dynamic.
Yeah, it's a dynamic conversation.
Okay.
And to be a part of that conversation, you have to be precise with your language.
Oh, okay.
And that brings us to our fourth pillar of academic writing,
Okay, what is that?
which is precision.
Precision. Okay.
Yeah, because one word can
Mhm.
totally throw off your whole argument. That's true.
Yeah. Think about the dengue fever example.
Right.
If you use a phrase like vector breeding conditions,
Mm-hmm.
which I know sounds like a mouthful,
It does sound very technical.
but that's way more specific than
Yeah,
just
that-
saying like, yeah, mosquito.
Mosquitoes spread dengue fever. Yeah.
Right, like where are these mosquitoes?
Yeah. Right.
What are we talking about here?
It's like if you showed up to fix a car
Yes.
and you're like, there's a thing.
Exactly.
Right.
You need the right tools.
You need the right tools. You need to use the right language. You need to be precise.
Yeah, it's all about precision. I like that.
It is.
But even when you are being precise and you've got all the right evidence,
Yeah.
you can't just present one side of the argument. You
Right,
have
no.
to present it in a balanced way.
You got to have balance.
Yeah.
That's our fifth pillar.
Balance. Okay.
Yes, because like we were just saying, it's a conversation.
Right.
You're presenting different perspectives,
And some of those perspectives might not even agree with you.
but you still have to present them.
You kind of have to.
That feels tricky.
It can be. It can.
How do you balance like arguing your point,
Right.
but also being like, but also here's the other side?
Right. Well, that's where these hedges and boosters come in
What?
that our source material was talking about.
Oh, right. Okay.
You know, hedges and boosters, they sound kind of funny.
They do. What are they?
So a hedge is basically a way to kind of soften your language
Okay.
to show that, like, you're not saying this is a fact. It's
Got it.
more like this is a possibility.
Okay.
So, like, instead of saying social media is ruining democracy.
Right, which is a very bold statement.
Which, yeah, very bold.
Yeah.
You could say, like, some studies suggest that social media might be having a negative impact on how we think about politics.
Okay, so it's less aggressive.
It's softer,
Yeah, it's softer.
and it leaves room for other interpretations.
Okay, so you're not like
Yeah.
shutting down the conversation.
Exactly.
Wow.
You're opening it up.
Okay, you're saying like this is one possibility, but there could be other factors at play here.
I like that.
Right.
Okay, and what about the booster? You said booster.
Oh, yeah. So a booster is like the opposite.
Okay.
It's when you have really strong evidence and you're like, no, I'm going to double down on this.
Okay.
I really want you to pay attention to this point because it's important.
Okay.
So instead of just saying like, yeah, there's a connection between climate change and all these crazy weather events that are happening,
Right.
you could say something like, listen, there is clear evidence of a strong correlation between climate change and the increasing frequency and severity of extreme weather events.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you're really hitting it hard.
So you're not just presenting the information, you're telling the reader, hey, pay attention to this.
This is important.
This matters.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's about being deliberate with your language
Right.
to really get your point across. But even when you're being deliberate with your language and using all these great tools,
Yeah.
you still have to try to be as objective as possible.
You've got to leave your opinions at the door.
Right. Okay. This is hard.
Yeah, this is tough.
Yeah.
But that's our next pillar.
Okay.
Objectivity.
Objectivity. Okay, so we're not letting our own personal opinions get in the way of the research.
Exactly. You got to check yourself at the door.
Yeah, like, am I being biased here?
Right. Is this my opinion or is this what the data says?
Oh, is this what the data says? Okay.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day,
Mhm.
you're trying to let the evidence speak for itself.
Right.
You're not trying to convince somebody based on your opinion.
Right. You want them to look at the evidence and come to their own conclusion.
Exactly. Because like we said, it's an ongoing conversation.
Right. It's a conversation.
You're just adding your 2 cents.
Yeah, and when you're trying to have a really productive conversation,
Mm.
you don't want to like get really informal, right?
Oh, that's true.
It's like you were saying, you got to wear the right clothes to the meeting.
Right. You don't want to be unprofessional.
You want to be taken seriously.
Yeah, you want to sound like you know what you're talking about.
Exactly. And that brings us to that final pillar, formality.
Yes. Formality.
So why is it so important to be formal in academic writing?
Well, I think it all goes back to credibility.
Okay.
if you've got a paper and it's full of slang and emojis,
Right.
it's kind of hard to take that seriously.
Yeah, you wouldn't use emojis in your thesis paper?
Probably not a good look.
Okay.
But if it's well written, it's using precise language.
Mm-hmm.
It follows the structure that we talked about. It cites all its sources. It's objective.
Okay.
It just comes across as more credible.
It makes me think about that saying, you only get to make one first impression.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
And with academic writing, that first impression is everything.
It is. It is.
Wow, this has been amazing.
It has been fun.
This deep dive, I feel like I learned so much.
Me too.
Like we really broke it down.
Yeah.
We went through all 7 pillars of academic writing.
We did.
Structure, evidence, critical thinking, precision, balance, objectivity, and formality.
I think we covered it all.
Yeah, and we really went in depth.
We did a deep dive.
We did a deep dive.
I think people are going to find this super helpful.
I do too. I think no matter where you encounter this kind of writing, like even just understanding it a bit more
Yeah.
can really help you just navigate all of the information.
For sure. And you can impress your friends.
And impress your friends.
When you're like, well, actually, if you look at the research,
Here's the edge.
that's right.
That's awesome.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
It went by so fast.
I know, right? It really did. But thank you so much for joining me for this fascinating conversation.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you to everyone listening for coming on this deep dive with us.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
And remember, keep those minds curious, and we'll see you next time.